All right, we're going to start our class in 2 minutes. 8:05, we're going to start our session today. All right, let's start our class. Let me share my screen quickly. All right, please let me know if you guys can hear me okay.
Yes.
All right, perfect. All right, so we left the last class at software testing lifecycle, right? So I'm just going to give you a little bit of overview how the software testing lifecycle works. So as we mentioned in the last class, the software testing lifecycle basically starts with the requirement analysis, right? So after we're gonna do the requirement analysis, we're gonna come up with the test plan. Now, where I can get my requirement so that I can analyze the requirement. So I will have to go back to my business requirement document or application process flow or use case or UI specs or application design flow, right? So those are my requirement document I'm gonna get from the business. So once I do have those documents, I can analyze this document, and based on my analysis, I'm gonna come up with test plan, which is the second step, right? Now, question. Who is going to responsible to write a test plan? Normally, each and every company, either senior, lead, or the manager is responsible to write down the test plan. But once you have the test plan with you, or your senior or your manager who's going to give you the test plan, you need to make sure that you can read those test plan or that test plan to make sure that you can understand exactly what they're trying to tell you. So we're going to go over the test plan, then we're going to proceed with the next phase, right? So let me pull out the test plan. This is the sample test plan. In the last class, I already told you guys this is the sample one, but how I can read the test plan, or what are the things we can see in the test plan, which is very essential information if I can write down my test case or move to the next phase, right? So test plan normally includes a couple of things on it. So the first thing, they have the introduction about the projects. They write the purpose, basically why we are going to perform this testing for that particular application. After that, they said, what are the functionality or what exactly I need to test? So they're gonna put in scope, out scope. In scope means things we need to test, and out of scope means like the things we don't need to test. So they mention a lot of stuff on the test plan. Now, other things they covered, basically the browser. What is called browser? Browser, basically, as we can see, the Chrome, IE, Safari, everyone use, right? So those are the browsers. So if that particular application we need to test, where I'm going to test, do I need to use the desktop browser or mobile browser or the tablet? Where I need to test, and how many types of browser I need to validate in the same application. So they mention each and every details on the test plan, exactly what you need to test and how you're gonna test. Then they just put the basic roles and responsibilities for the team who's gonna approach with these projects. Also, they put the timeline. Also, they put like, the test scenario. You need to report the defect, how you need to submit the report. So they're gonna mention everything on the test plan. If I can go over the test plan a little deeper, I can see here, they just put the initial introduction of the project's purpose. Then this is the functionality of the test case. Exactly, they mention in scope. This in scope means what I am going to validate, or based on what I am going to write down the test. Sorry, guys. I'm just trying to mute someone. Okay. So for in scope means basically what exactly I'm going to test based on what type of functionality. So they mention the functionality list or list of functionality they mention in the test case under the in scope, so that you understand, okay, these are the functionality I need to test. If they mention something out of scope, right? So out of scope, you can see here somewhere in the bottom. So this is all in scope, means for this particular test case or for this particular projects, you need to validate all of the functionality. See, out of scope. So out of scope basically mention these are the functionality they have in the application, but you don't need to test this. But once they are trying to write down, or once they wrote that test plan, they need to mention in their plan exactly what the functionality we are going to validate and what are the functionality we are not going to validate. So anything we're not going to validate, that's going to be under the out of scope list in the particular test case document. All right. So out of scope, they mention here, then as I told you, right, the browser. So they also need to mention here what type of browser or what is the desktop browser you need to use to validate this application. They also mention the mobile browser as well, and the tablet. If it's the tablet is required, they mention, yes, you need to validate in tablet. If it's not, it's not. If they say, okay, the mobile application or the mobile, not the, this is not the application. So don't mix up with the mobile application and the mobile browser. This is two different things. Mobile browser is basically same as like the laptop or the tablet browser. You just go put the URL, the application pops up. And the mobile application is basically you need to go to either Play Store or Apple Store, then you need to download that particular application. So they don't have the URL. They have the mobile icon, like, the application icon, so that you can validate that. So the browser you need to mention here. Similar way for the desktop, they need to mention here in the browser, right? Then after that, roles and responsibilities for the project team members, they put like, the project manager name on it, developer's name, QA coordinator, then like, the other portfolio managers who's going to test, how many tester is there, they mention everything on it. So this is a very high level document. Basically, they mention what are the things you can test, what are the things you cannot test, how you're gonna start testing. When you finish the testing, they put the timeline, particular team involved with this test, what type of browser you need to test, what are the version of the browser you need to test, they mention everything on it. Then test approach, basically, as I told you, entrance and exit criteria. This is another interview question. Sometimes they ask, what do you mean by entrance and exit criteria? So entrance criteria basically is nothing but what phase you're gonna start your testing, and exit criteria is like when you're gonna finish your testing. So they mention everything here. But once we can start working with writing down the test cases, starting with the projects, we can cover more stuff on it, and we can discuss more about entrance criteria, exit criteria, in scope, out of scope, functionality, non-functionality, everything we're going to cover later on. So also they mention the timeline, right? Then timeline and what type of scenarios they have, how many scenarios might need to come up with it, then test cases, then defect flow, how you need to write down the defect, then defect life cycle we can discuss later on. But they also mention the severity of the defect, which is like the either critical, high, low, medium. These things we're going to cover later on again. Then the priority, like once you can see or find the defect as a QA, that's your main job to identify, right? So how are you gonna prioritize those defects? Is it like the urgent thing, or is it like the high, or is it medium or low? So you're gonna decide those things later on, like once you're gonna working with the real-time project on it. So they mention each and everything here. As I told you, right, the entrance and exit criteria, they mention how you can entrance, like enter the testing, and when you need to exit the testing. Then what are the different type of testing you need to perform? That's the most important thing, right? The different type of testing. So this is the document basically. So that's going to cover a lot of stuff on it. I'm going to send you this document to overview after end of the class, so you can get that document. So in the software testing lifecycle, right? So after complete this software, the test plan, what is the next things is coming up to write down the test case or test case development. So as a QA, all you need to do basically, your first job is to be, once you'll be in the office, you need to focus on write down the test case. And once you write down the test case, then you need to execute the test case. So execution and writing test case, this is your main job to do. Now, before I write down the test case or before I come up with the test case, what are the different type of testing I need to perform, or what are the different type of testing they have it in the QA, right? So initially the class of the testing, or the classified the testing in software testing in two different ways. So just think about very simple stuff. First thing first, which is one they say the black box testing, and another one is white box testing. Now, who is going to perform the black box testing? So if you are the QA, so as a QA, you need to perform the black box testing. And most of the developers or the development team, they are going to perform the white box testing. So this is a very generic term. They are saying the black box and white box testing. Now, I'm gonna go with the white box first because once the developer have the requirement ready, so they know the initial structure or the design of the application, then they try to implement the application. They know the basically the what that the code they are trying to test. Basically, they perform the unit test. I'm gonna do that one in the later phase. But let's say based on the business requirement, they build a very initial phase of that application and they're trying to perform some type of testing. And those testing are based on what? Based on the very initial structure of the application or the design of the application. That time they're gonna perform one kind of test, which is called white box testing. So this white box testing only done by the developers. We don't need to perform anything as a QA, but as a QA, you need to perform the black box testing. So black box testing is the similar way. This also validate the initial phase of the structure or the design. Same thing, structure or the design of that particular application or the software, but the catch is basically you don't know anything about the code. You're just trying to initially validate how that application should look like. That type of testing, once you're going to perform, that should be the black box testing. So the difference between black box and the white box is developer write their code so they know exactly what they're trying to test, which is white box testing. And as a QA, you don't know about the code, right? You just validate the initial validation of the particular application or the software, just a structure of the design and seeing that like if it's working fine or not. This type of validation called black box validation or black box testing. So this is very basic, starting with what is called black box and the white box. But once you will be in the office, right? No one gonna tell you that like, okay, can you perform the black box testing or can you perform the white box testing? No, they're not gonna tell you anything. They're gonna go by the structure of the testing. What is the structure of the testing? So if I can consider the initial starting phase, 1 second. Go. I've lost that document. Okay, so they're gonna go by the type of the testing. So what are the types of the testing we do have it? Normally we come up with two different type of testing. One is functional testing, one is non-functional testing, or we call it as functionality validation or non-functionality validation. So the testing comes up with the first phase is functional or functionality validation, right? So in the functional testing, what you can see, we have different type of testing called the unit test, integration, system, and acceptance. Now, unit test is one kind of white box testing, which is done by the developers. So we are not going to perform anything about the unit test because the process is once the developer receives the business requirement document and all other documents, they're trying to build the code or build the application based on writing their code, right? So once the code, initial code is ready in their end, so they're going to perform to check the very initial validation of that software to making sure that if it's working or not. So that type of validation they're going to perform in their end, which is developers. So unit test is basically done by the developers. So the QA is not going to do any type of unit test, but as a QA, you need to perform integration test, system testing, acceptance testing based on the company. Why I'm saying that based on the company, but acceptance test I'm going to come up with later on. So basically your focus is to be the functional testing with the integration system testing. Then also the non-functional testing also QA is going to perform, but not the security test and the performance test. You only need to focus on usability testing and compatibility testing. So why I'm saying that not security and not performance, because security testing done by the IT security team. So they have the separate team, because for the security testing, they have a lot of things involved with it, and like there's a lot of in written code and the different type of tools they are going to use to measure the security of that particular application. So the security, IT security, they have the different team. Similar way, the performance. So if you are applying for normal QA or quality assurance analyst, engineer, or even the senior position, right? So you're not going to do any performance testing because the performance has the separate team, and they're going to use the different tools to perform that or measure that validation of performance of that particular application. So normally as a QA, what I'm going to focus on, so you're going to basically focus on integration testing, system testing, acceptance testing, usability, and compatibility testing. Now, integration testing, there's a few things inside of the integration testing, different type of testing basically. The system also has different type of testing. Acceptance testing, you don't need to perform alpha or beta testing. All you need to do the user acceptance testing if that company doesn't have the UAT people. So as I mentioned in the first class, I don't know like you guys remember that or not. So UAT is a different type of testing need to perform by the business to making sure that before it's going to go to the production for that particular application is working as expected. So that's called the user acceptance test. Now, if the company you work with or you're going to work with, if the company has the particular team set up for UAT, you don't need to worry about the user acceptance testing. If that particular company doesn't have that team, sometimes they're saying and come up with the QA saying that like, can you perform the UAT testing for us? Or once you can apply for any of the position in the market, you can see some of the position they are saying you are the user acceptance tester. They're trying to look for user acceptance tester. But that time, like you need to perform this type of testing. So we're gonna go each and every testing in depth. But before that, so let's say this one, right? Non-functional or non-functionality testing I need to perform. So one of the non-functionality testing is usability testing. Usability testing is why I'm saying is non-functional. What is called function? So what is called function? So simple example of the function is if I can go to any of the application, let's say I go to Facebook, right? If I am going to see any action, where I can see the action, actions comes up with the button, right? Or the link, or the link. So if I'm trying to click here, that time I can get some results. Or if I can click here, which is the link forget password, I can get some results or get some response. Similar way, if I can click here, create new account, I can get some response. So whenever you are going to get any type of response to click some of the button or the link of that particular application, those are called the functions or functionality, right? Or even though if I'm able to put something, right, on the box, text box, this is called the text box. These are the text box. If I'm going to put something inside of the text box or write something on it, so this is called a function. So function means like once I can have some input, or if I can at least click on something, I can get the response. Now, why I'm starting with the non-functional stuff? Because this is easy to understand. So non-function or non-functional testing you need to perform, start with the usability testing. What is just validate the UI testing. What is called UI? UI is basically user interface, right? Now, if I can tell you, go to the Facebook homepage and you can validate or you can perform some of the UI testing. What exactly you're trying to do here? So all you need to do, basically, you need to check, am I able to see this Facebook written here or not? Am I able to correctly seeing this context or contexter here or not? Is that the Facebook F is the uppercase or the lowercase based on the business requirement? If the business requirement say it has to be F as a uppercase, the F uppercase should be here. So this is the validation. You're going to do it for the UI validation, which is non-functional. You're not going to click or you're not going to check anything. You're just going to validate the user interface. This is whole thing called as a user interface. Then also I'm going to check, I do need some type of pop-up. It's not a pop-up box, it's just a design layout. So one of the box should be here, which include username, password, or user able to enter their email address or phone number, then password. They might have one button which is called login. Also, they have one link which called forget password, and also they have the another green button which is called create new account. And they also have some of the written things are here, like, you know, the create page for the celebrities brand new. They might have the different link. I don't know, like, is that the different link or not? But if it's the link, it's link, it should be there. So UI validation is nothing but it's just a user interface, what you can see. There's no action is required for that. That's why they call as a non-functional testing. That's why they call as a non-functional. So this is UI. Now, cross-browser testing and cross-platform. What is called the cross-browser testing? How many browser we do have it? We have IE, we have Microsoft Edge, we have Chrome, which is most popular. Everyone uses the Chrome, right? Then we do have it Safari. We have lot of other browsers too. So cross-browser validation means like, is that the Facebook I'm using in Edge, Microsoft Edge, which is the latest version of IE. So if I can validate or if I can check the functionality in Edge, also I do perform the similar type of testing in Chrome or the other browser. That time, basically what exactly is going to perform or what the expected result or what I can see on those different browser, this type of testing when I'm going to perform is basically the cross-browser testing. Means same or similar type of testing you're going to perform in the different browser. That's why they call the cross-browser testing. Similar way, under the compatibility testing, You can see the cross-platform testing. Which is the cross-platform testing? This is basically nothing but this is the application we have, right? So if I can validate this, if we can validate this application in the different platform, what is the different platform we can use? Let's say we're gonna use in the different version of Windows, right? Then we can validate this one in the different version of Mac, iOS, or OS, right? So those things like, the different platform we consider and test the same application. That time we're going to do the cross-platform testing. Okay, then what is the next thing is coming up? Okay.
Excuse me, can I just repeat it again? Those two things, cross-browser testing and the cross-platform, please.
Okay, so cross-browser, basically, this is gonna be same application in different browser. And cross-platform is same application in different platform, like different type of Windows, different type of OS, and different type of mobile. The mobile has like, the mobile application has every time they're gonna send you the updates,
Yeah,
right? So different updates. So those are the different platform, right? So each platform you can validate the same application and saying that what is the result is same for across the all of the platform or not. Make sense?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Okay. Would you please just give me 1 minute? I'll just back in 1 minute.
Yeah, of course.
All right, sorry for that. Okay, so for the non-functional is done basically. So there's a two different type of testing they have it. We already covered that. For the functional testing, so your day-to-day life in the office, you need to focus on the functional testing more than non-functional testing. So functional testing is your bread and butter once you'll be in the office. Now for the functional testing, we have a different layer, which is basically the different types of functional testing we do have included with it. So first thing is smoke testing. What is called a smoke test? We're going to cover that, but as of today, or as of now, what we're exactly going to do is only focus on functional testing. So the functional testing, if we can think about any of the application, again, I'm going to pull the Facebook, right? So for the Facebook, I'm going to test the functionality of the Facebook. What you can all see here in this page, this is the Facebook login page, right? So login is a one kind of functionality. So for the functionality testing, how many different way we can validate this functional testing? So there's a two different way. One is positive way and another one is negative way. So these two are the basic functional testing is required your day-to-day life of for each and every application once you'll be in the office basically. So now how I can think or how I can come up with the positive testing or how I can come up with the negative testing, right? So the positive testing is basically whatever the application you can see or what are the functionalities of that particular application you see, if you can think anything in positive way or come up with some positive scenario, that's testing is basically the positive functionality testing or functionality testing in positive way. Now, I can give you one example. Let's say this is Facebook and we are trying to validate one very high level scenario, which is called Facebook login page. So the login page only includes this three area, right? This three area. So what they have in this three area, they have two text box. These are the text box. These box are called as a text box. So this text box basically used for to enter the data, to enter or insert the data. That's why we're going to use this text box to receive or grab or input the data on this text box. After that, there is a button which is make the action to response this data. So what is functionality testing? Functionality testing is basically nothing but if we can have some type of input or text box. Based on the text box, you can insert the data and try to see some action, click on the button. That type of testing is basically the simpler we can call as a functional testing. Now, functional testing, as I told you, right? There's a two different type of functional testing. One is positive testing and another one is negative testing. How I can think the positive testing in here with this little function. So positive testing is basically once I'm going to use the correct or right data to validate that particular functionality. That type of testing called the positive functionality validation. Now, what is my right data type? They say enter your email address or phone number. This is your user name, right? Either it's your cell phone number or your email address. Then you need to put your password. Now, for the positive testing, if I'm going to use my right or correct email address or phone number, then put the right password, then click on login. That means I'm going to validate the positive scenario, right? This is my positive scenario or positive test case, which is the positive functional test case I'm trying to write or execute, whatever. Now, similar way, what is called the negative functionality I'm going to validate here? If I'm going to input incorrect data, let's say my password is 1234. This is my right password. I input or I insert the right password, but my username is, let's say, t@gmail.com. This is my username. There's an email, right? So instead of the T, I use a@gmail.com. That means I insert or input the wrong password. No, sorry, wrong username. And I put the right password. So once I'm going to put based on the data, or once I'm going to perform some type of scenario, which I'm going to consider the negative or incorrect, either username or the password, and try to log in and let's see how the application behaves. That time it's going to be considered as a negative functionality testing. So positive and negative functionality testing is very basic testing for the functionality, like the function. Any type of function you can test, you need to think two different ways, right? One is positive way, another one is negative way. So once you think about the positive way and once you think about the negative way, you can come up with a lot of test scenario and test cases. I'm going to cover that in the future class. Maybe today I can start with this. But before that, why your work as a QA and what is your responsibilities? Your responsibilities is to find the problem in the application, right? And why negative testing is most important. Basically, once the developer have the requirement or the business requirement on their hand and then trying to build the application, each and every person trying to think the positive way. So based on that statement or based on that functionality, developer also develop the application and QA is going to validate that functionality, right? So mostly once you can think the negative scenario or negative functionality, that time you're gonna find more problem in the application. So your main job is to try to break the application. So why you are trying to break the application? Because as a QA, you need to report those problems to the developers and developer can work on those issues, fix those problems, send it back to you, and you can again test that problem, right? So your job is to find the problem in the application. So everyone thinks about the positive way. That's why mostly once you're trying to validate the positive scenario, you're not gonna find any problem. But once you're trying to find the negative scenario or negative way, once you can think how many functionality I can validate, how many ways I can test that particular functionality, that time you're able to find more issues and you need to log those problems. All right, so after that, basically, we are gonna come up with a smoke test. What is called a smoke test? A smoke test, integration, regression. These three testing, including functional testing, these 4 or 5 testing is your most important testing you need to perform in day-to-day life, no matter what. If you get a job, if you're in the office, the first thing first, you need to do the functionality testing, and which is come up with positive and negative testing, right? Then after that, smoke testing, integration, and regression. Now, integration, I'm going to start with the integration because it's easy to understand. Integration, let's say, what is integration? Integration is the simple definition of integration is basically you need to merge or you can connect two things together, right? So if I have like the A and B, I'm trying to merge or connect A and B together. Let's say A plus B equal to AB, right? So similar way, the application, each and every application has lot of different type of modules. What is called module? So if I can consider this is a Facebook application, right? So the Facebook application has first thing first, this is a landing page for the login, right? So this login is a one module which is called login module, and it has few functionalities inside of it, right? Similar way, forget password. Even though if we can say this is a simple link, this is considered as another module. So this is module 1, this is module 2. Similar way, this one, right? They create the new account. So this is considered as another module. So each and every application has a lot of different type of modules. But once the developer trying to work or build that particular application, they are working with each individual module first. After that, they are trying to merge those multiple module in one place or in one application. So once you have the multiple modules ready and merged in one place, that time you need to perform the integration testing, making sure that if I consider the login functionality is working fine in the first phase, with that module, if I can validate or check the forget password is also working with that or not. So now it's coming up with the two different modules, right? Login and forget password in one scenario. So this type of testing you need to perform once the developer trying to push their different code or different module in one place in the application. You need to perform the integration testing to making sure that these two different module or three or multiple modules are integrated together and working fine as expected or not. So this type of testing, once you're going to perform this called as an integration testing. Then you're going to perform smoke test. Smoke test is nothing but it's a very high level testing. Basically, like once you have some of the feature or the functionalities ready, then they need to deploy the different environment. All you need to do just go and do very quick glance of testing, making sure that whatever you have done so far for that particular testing is exactly working again as expected or not. So this is called the smoke test. So integration and smoke test. These two along with this functional testing, right? Regression testing, there's a few kind of regression testing we do have it. I'm not going to cover today because it's going to be too much for you guys to understand different type of testing. What I'm going to cover today based on only focus on one testing today, which is called functional testing, right? So if I consider the functional testing is my bread and butter for like starting from the first day and go back to the slide, this slide. So the third phase is like the test case creation or the test case development, right? So each and every person need to write test case. You guys need to know how to write test case and what are the things involved in the test case. So I'm just going to directly come up with the test case. I'm not going to write down the test case, but I'm going to explain the test case template, which is another important things you need to know. Okay. So before you're going to test or execute any of the test scenario or test case, you'll have to write the test case no matter what. So there's a different way we can write it down test case, right? Three different way basically. So, okay, first two different way. One is manual testing and another one is automation testing. Inside of the manual testing, they have two different way we can test. One is we can write the test case in Excel. Another one is we can write the test case in testing tools. What are the testing tools we have it? We have the most popular is MTM, which is Microsoft Test Manager, and another one is ALM, Application Lifecycle Management. We're going to cover these two applications later end of our manual testing class. We're going to cover this. So we're going to start from the Excel, how to write down the test cases. Then at the end of our manual testing class, we're going to cover these two. Also, once this manual testing will be done, we're going to phase or we're going to move to the automation, right? Okay, now think about what is the template. So this is the very generic or the basic template you can see each and every company. So let me this one little big so you can understand and see those things. Okay. So the template, first thing first, coming with the project name, right? So let's say if I can consider I'm going to start working with the Facebook, literally I can write it down here as a Facebook is my project name. As I told you, module name, you need to mention here. What are the modules we do have it? If I can consider same as this Facebook application, my module would be either login, forget password, or create a new account, right? So in the Excel sheet, I need to mention my module name. What are the modules I'm trying to work with that? Reference document. Can anyone tell me what would be my reference document to write down my test case for that particular project? Any of one in the class can tell me what would be my reference document?
Business requirement document or
Right. Thank you. So what about the documents I can receive as a day of one? Either business requirement document or application design flow or use case or UI specs, any type of document to understand the project and the functionality, you guys need to write down that document name here. Now, depends on the project and the project phase. Same type of document has a different version. Let's say the day one you start with some of the project called Facebook, they're going to give you the business requirement document, right? And the document version is 001. So you need to write business requirement document version 001. Later on, they might update this document because they're trying to add few more functionalities on it. They change the version as a 2. So making sure that if I can only write down the business requirement document here, right? I couldn't find the exact document, is it version 1 or 2? So exactly you need to write down the way they have it on the front page of that particular document. If they mention the version, you need to write down the version. If they say prepared by someone, which may be the reference, you need to put his name or her name on it. Or if it's just a one document, they said like the business requirement document for particular application, you just need to write it down. But don't miss the version if the version is there, okay? So created by, definitely it should be your name on it. The date of creation, similar way, the whenever the date you are trying to write that test case or that document, you need to put the date on it. Review, okay? So creation date and the review date. Review basically like once you are trying to execute that particular test case, that time you need to put the execution date on it. That means you're going to review that functionality. So creation date and the review date, either it should be the same date or the separate date, right? Now, test case priority or the test priority. So the priority you need to mention here, what is the priority of validating that particular test case? Is it the priority is like you need to execute as soon as possible? Because they're going to set the priority, basically. Priority severity, they're going to set. So all you need to do, just need to write down based on that functionalities. If it's like, as soon as possible you need to do it, you need to mention those. If it's like, later on, sometimes you need to mention that. If you have the dependency, you need to mention that. So like as a priority is basically coming up with the document. So all you need to do, just write down that's a priority. Environment, right? So as a QA, the first thing first, you need to validate in the test environment, which is called the QA environment, test or QA environment. But how many environment we do have? Just a recap for it. At least each and every company has 4 different type of environment. So they are going to build the application in the first development or dev environment, which basically controlled by only the developers. Once they build that application in the first phase in development or dev environment, they're gonna push that application to the QA environment or test environment, which QA is only the person who is responsible to maintain or test that application in this particular environment. After that, that's gonna move to UAT environment or staging environment. Basically, these environments controlled by the business folks. Why business folks are trying to control this environment? Let's say once you established or trying to build the application from the scratch, right? So first person is in your team is a developer. They are trying to build something on their own environment, making sure that it's working up and running, push to your environment, which is QA. QA validating that same thing, then push to UAT. Now, once they can work on the dev environment, parallelly, you can work on the QA environment, right? So the same thing, they can develop and you can test. And also, they can also perform testing while the developers working with the different environment, but it's in the same application. But once the development is done for that particular environment, which is dev environment, they need to push to two different environment to making sure that each and every environment has the same code. And before anything push to the production, which is the live environment you can see here, right? www.facebook.com. This is the production environment. So before this Facebook coming in this production environment, they already tested in at minimum 3 up to 5 different environment to making sure that the whole application is stable. So the final and the last phase of the environment mostly for that company would be UAT environment. And once that UAT environment, they validated all the functionality and working as expected, finally they push to this production environment, which is facebook.com. This is the URL for production environment. All right. Now go back to the test case. So as same way, you need to just mention the environment name in here, right? Now you need to write down the test scenario and the test case. What is called the test scenario and what is called the test case? Some of the company, they consider the test scenario and test case is the same thing. Some of the company, they said no, test scenario is little different than test case. So we need to learn both ways. If I'm going to consider this is the application I'm trying to work on it, and I'm only focusing on this login, right? What would be my test scenario for this particular functionality? My test scenario would be Facebook login. This is my test scenario. Now, based on that scenario, if I'm trying to tell you to write down the test case, so scenario would be only one, but you have to come up with multiple test cases out of that one scenario. Why? if I can consider this Facebook login is my scenario, I need to come up with different type of testing, right? Or come up with different type of test cases. As I told you, right? If this is only the functionality testing, if I can consider, I can think about positive and negative both way I need to test, or I need to write the test cases before I need to execute it, right? What would be my possible positive test case for this test, for this Facebook login test scenario? One of my test case would be, if I can think positive, I can easily put my valid username, valid password, login. This is my one test case. Second test case, I can think about negative. Wrong username, wrong password, try to log in. This is my second test case, which is negative. Go back to again in positive, right? I can enter either email address or the phone number, which is correct, and the correct password, try to log in. Negative, I can only put my correct username, right password, which is correct username, wrong password, and try to log in. This is my negative testing, right? Vice versa. If I can put my incorrect username, correct password, try to log in. Let's see how the application behaves. So basically, this is a very small piece of functionality here, right? This login. They have only two text box and one button. And I'm trying to break this application and seeing all the way, or all different way, or how many different way user can try to log in this Facebook account. So if I can consider this Facebook login is my scenario, I can come up with many different test cases out of this login scenario, right? So if I can go back to my Excel sheet, if we can see here, test scenario. So the test scenario I consider as a Facebook login, right? Now test case title. So the test case title is basically each and individual test case name. You need to write it down here. Then precondition. What is called precondition? Let's say I'm going to consider again Facebook application. I need to validate one of the functionality after successfully login to the Facebook. If I can successfully put my username, password, then click on login, and if that particular functionality going to work, where I'm gonna go? I'm gonna go to the home page of this Facebook, right? And I'm pretty sure all of you know how the home page looks like, right? Now, similar way, if I'm going to write down the test scenario for Facebook homepage and write some test cases, what would be my precondition to execute or write this particular test scenario or test case? What are the precondition or the prerequisite to get into that particular module before I can be there? I need to log in to the Facebook, right? So the Facebook login would be my precondition, then I can go to Facebook homepage. So once you're going to write down the test case, this is the another important thing you need to mention. The precondition phase or the precondition is you need to make sure that you're successfully log in to the Facebook so that you can validate the next phase of the functionality. Then once you start or writing the test case. So test case, what is called the test case? Test case is nothing but writing the test step by step, and you can get what? You can get the actual result and also the final report of that particular scenario. This is called the test case. Now, the bookish explanation, I already sent you guys the note or the slides, so you can read over there. But the way I'm explained is basically like very constant. It's not like the bookish things I'm going to explain to you, so you can understand easily, you know. But if you want to cross check or try to understand something about that particular descriptions or how this going to work, how it's going to work, I can explain. But like, you know, the bookish description, you can go over with those slides so you can have those information. But general way, I need to wrap up the session because I know like someone trying to leave by 9:15 or 9:30. Okay. What is called test case, right? So the test case basically come up with few different steps, right? So the test case is basically you need to have some type of test case ID, which is most important to track your each and every test case or test scenario. Once I'm starting writing that test case, I need to make a test case or test step, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, something like that, right? Then I need to put the test case step or the description. Basically, why I need to write it down. So test case description is if anyone trying to validate that particular piece of functionality, you need to write the description exactly how that user going to there or going to be there to check that particular piece of code. That's why I'm going to write the step description or the test step I need to follow. Data, very, very important thing, right? Because without data, you cannot validate any of the application. Let's say I have Facebook, right? I need to insert the data where? Here and here. If I don't have any data, I'm not able to use Facebook because the Facebook is not only the Facebook, each and every application, everything depends on the data. So without data, there's nothing. So data, what is called data? Data is nothing but your username and password. This is called data. So once I'm going to write down the test case, I need to mention my username and the password. Even though if I'm going to validate the negative scenario, I will have to still mention my negative username or wrong password or wrong username, negative password, whatever is it, I need to mention. So data is most important to validate any of the scenarios. Then expected result. Expected result is basically once I can write down the description or the test step, I need to expect something so that I can write it down here. Let's say what is the thing I can expect here? If I can consider one of the test step is enter valid username. So my expectation would be user able to enter the valid username in this particular text box. Also, this once I can enter that valid username, that name should be displayed, right? That name should be displayed. Like I'm going to enter some data, right? So once I enter the data, it's going to be displayed in this text box. This is my expectation. Similar way, once I can write it down the test case or write the test case, I need to write the expected result for that particular line of testing. What is my expectation? So I need to write down here. So write down the test case up to this. You need to basically focus on step, test case description, data, and you need to write down the expected result. Now, after that, you see here, this phase, the execution list is coming up, right? So this is the way you can execute. What is the way I can execute? Once my test case is ready, then actual result and the status, I need to write it down. How I can write down the actual result or how I can put the status is pass or fail. I can put that once I'm going to execute my test case, that time based on my execution, I'll have to cross check what they're saying here in expected result column and what exactly I am going to see in that particular application. So let's say for this Facebook, right? My expectation would be I can enter my username. This is my expectation. Once I'm going to execute this, I'm still trying to test. I can able to put my username. So my expectation matches with my actual execution, right? So if this going to match, all you need to do, just write down the same thing. All you need to mention here, you successfully execute that step and the status would for that particular step will be pass. Similar way, if I mention or my expected result expectation would be I can able to enter my username and I'm trying to, let's say I'm trying to enter the username, right? And I'm not able to enter, or even though if I'm able to enter my username, I cannot see that username displayed, means this is not going to meet my expectation, which is fail. This status will be fail. Yeah. Any question? Anyone? I think someone trying to.
Yes, please. I have only the first one, the ID, the first column.
First column.
Yeah, test case ID.
Yeah.
What was expected to write there?
Oh, a test case ID, you just need to put the test case ID, like, 001. So this one will be more little more clear, like once I'm going to work with hands-on with some of the projects from the next class. So I'm just trying to explain the format, how it's going to work, right? So test case ID is basically just the number, like 001, 002, 003. It depends on like how many test case you need to execute. So each different test title come up with each different test case ID. That's it. It's nothing but like, you don't need to write down anything. It's just a number, the sequence of the number. So once something is not going to match with your expectation, you need to make that step as a fail, right? So once you make that step as a fail, then you need to come up with the bug, which is a different life cycle. But next class, what we're focusing on, I'm going to wrap up the session today, but next class we'll be working on the functional testing. We will start with working with the projects, then start again from this phase, basically how we're going to come up with scenarios, test case title, start writing the test case from the scratch. So I'll be working with one of the projects with you guys. Then after that, I'm gonna give you some homework to you guys so that you can do your own and submit those homework in later on. But next class, we'll be starting with one of the projects, okay? So as of now, you guys have any questions so far what I have done? If you have any question, you can ask me so that I can clear those things to you. So any question about software testing life cycle, different type of testing, then the template of the test case, or the scenario, or the writing the test case, or any type of like, you know, what is called test case, or how I can write down the scenario, or how I can come up with the test case, positive testing, negative testing, any questions if you have. And by the way, one more thing, the things we covered in the topic today, that's all an interview question. What is called positive testing, what is called negative testing, what type of different testing you need to perform day-to-day life, what is called test case, how we can come up with the test scenario. This all are interview questions. So now I think you guys have questions, right? Okay, if you guys don't have any question, watch my videos. I'm gonna send you the link end of today, like end of not today, tonight. Sometimes it's gonna be uploaded in YouTube. Send you the link. You can take a look at that, but try to understand, because from now on the class, there's a more technical things is coming up day after day. So it's not gonna be that easy the way you think maybe, but it's not a rocket science. If you can understand the process step by step, move forward with like everything, like, you know, easier way to understand with the class, then like it's gonna be very easier for you to understand and, you know, come up with the things. So it's gonna be really easy for you to handle those problems and stuff. If you guys don't have any questions, I'll just wrap up the session today, and we'll talk to you day after tomorrow at 8 o'clock. All right, guys. Thank you.
Can I get the template?
Yeah,
separately?
I'm gonna send you all the slides, templates, everything to the email so that you can have it on your document.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. So no other questions? All right. If you don't have any questions, thanks for tonight then. I'll talk to you after tomorrow. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank
Thank you.